Welcome to the Sunday morning podcast. Today we are four pastors who love ministry, leadership, and sports. Us Cowboy fans are licking our wounds. Cowboys should have been in the NFC Championship, but Adam, I'll stop there. Adam, you doing all right today coming from Richmond?
I'm doing okay. It's a beautiful day here in Richmond, but I do have to confess that, here I am sitting with two Cowboy fans and a Duke fan. So I don't really know what to make of that, but here I am. The Lord greatly uses trials in our life, but we're here.
Count me in on the Cowboys numbers, bro. That's
yes.
three Cowboys fans.
Yeah.
Man, I should have skipped today. I should have just skipped.
Trifecta.
Adam, we're testing your sanctification today. Today we are so happy to invite our guest coming all the way from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, the one and only Dr. Scott Pace. Dr. Pace, you doing all right today, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful sunny day, and things are looking up. Things are looking up.
Nice. Well, hey, me and my dad are coming remote. Adam, we are in your state today, coming from Virginia. Flew in early this morning. Dad, you feeling all right today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling really good, especially since Dallas just did something very good and very meaningful and very special. We got rid of our OC. So, man, I'm feeling good. It's a new day. Adam, next year,
yeah,
we're coming.
There it is, right there.
There it is.
Right on time. Time.
There it is, Adam. What he calls the Cowboy Delusion Month, baby. We just want prosperity. We never look back. We're moving forward.
Right.
We're already turning over a new leaf. But hey, fellas, let's jump into it real quick. Adam, wild day yesterday for the AFC and NFC Championship games. What were your overall thoughts?
In the episode last week, I mentioned that if Philly starts off hot, they are hard to slow down. That's exactly how that game transpired, albeit with Brock Purdy getting hurt. It kind of just made that situation even worse for them. But they're one of those teams where if you don't get a hold on them very quick, things get out of hand. And that's exactly what we saw happen. Jalen Hurts, as much as we've spoken well of him, and he didn't play terrible yesterday, but he wasn't the reason they blew them out. Philly just dominated on both sides of the ball up front. They're big boys on both sides. Really just gave San Fran all they could handle. So, that was neat to watch. And then that thriller of a game we had once again with Mahomes and Burrow. Wow. I mean, it's just, I was just glued to my television and just seeing Mahomes just grind that out. I mean, and to basically win the game by running really for the first time in the game to pick up that first down. And then the penalty came. Mahomes he's the greatest, and we've got to acknowledge we're living in the Mahomes era. And then you factor in that we were talking about how the Bengals had beaten them the three last times they played by 3 points. And then that game last night was a 3-point game. So I'm anticipating over the next 10 years, we'll probably see those two teams match up in the playoffs probably 4 or 5 times again. It's Burrow and Mahomes, and that's the era we're living in. But I'm all here for it. It was great. Very exciting. Great
television. Dr. Pace, what do you think? What stuck out to you?
I was obviously less entertained by the NFC. I have a great appreciation, though, even as a Cowboys fan. I got to give respect to the Eagles. They look tough this year. We handled them without Jalen Hurts. But, man, it was going to be tough for anybody to beat them in the NFC. They've just been strong all year. The AFC, I got to confess, I admire and respect Mahomes for all the wizardry he does. Like, he's ridiculous. I don't deny anything Adam said in terms of his talent and ability. I'm not as big a fan of the high ankle sprain narrative fitting into the category of a Jordan flu game or something like that. Like some people have tried to make it out to be. I think that was a little overblown and overhyped. I think you could see, it's going to be opportunistic for me to limp as I walk on the sideline when it didn't seem to affect him, in other parts. But whatever, like I got to give him his props. Again, great game. He played fine. I do think there was a hold on the backside that should have called that run and play back. It was really painfully obvious. I don't know if you've seen some of the footage just like how did this get messed? But I'm not one of those guys that's more like a Carolina fan that tries to blame the refs every time a team loses or wins. It is what it is. They were both playing tough game. So yeah, the Chiefs came away with it. And hey, it's going to be an entertaining Super Bowl, no matter where you land on which team. The Chiefs and Eagles, I think, are the two best teams coming out of both conferences. So it's going to be a worthwhile Super Bowl.
Man, this is great, Dr. Pace. You're a Cowboys fan, and you're already giving stuff to Adam. We need to have you on every week. This is just great. This is
the last time Dr. Pace is going to be on the show here.
Hey, I will say, somebody on the podcast week 1 tried to tell y'all about the Chiefs, and they were all over the Burrow bandwagon. Somebody's been riding the Bengals all year. Dad, your team finally took an L, your second favorite team. What happened?
The referees, that's what happened. Let's be honest, the referees. No, it was a good game. It was a great game, back and forth. I really think the Bengals were going to take over in the fourth quarter. It seemed like momentum was going their way, but I got to be honest, every time it seemed like the referees interfered. Now, I'm not going to blame it on the refs, because at the end of the day, you got to win the ball game. But every time it seemed like Bengals were really going to take over the fourth quarter, then something happened and took them back. But give it to Kansas City. They played tough. The defense played tougher than I thought that they could play. But also, I thought the Bengals played good ball, because from the very beginning, you could just tell it was going to be a grind. And they could have threw in the towel, but the Bengals, they kept pushing. They kind of got through some of that and stayed in the ball game. And so that's a credit to the Bengals. That's a credit to their quarterback and their coach. So I agree with the guys. They will be back, and they will be playing for many, many years to come. Now, I will say this on the other side. I thought it was just sad what happened in NFC, because I was really looking forward to seeing two powerhouses have a slobber knocker type of a ball game. Very similar. I wanted to see that defense against the offense. But when Brock Purdy went out and you realize that he's not coming back, it's going to take steam out of the defense. So I think that we would have seen a completely different ball game, of course, even with the defense. I'm not saying that Philly would have lost, but I wanted to see that game. And when the quarterback's out, second drive of the first quarter, and he's not coming back, the ball game was over. Everybody knew it. So I think the fans missed out more than anything else.
Let me just throw something out here real quick. If you think back a few years, how full circle is it thinking about to Alabama, Georgia, Jalen Hurts playing terrible in the first half, Alabama fans, Robbie Woodham, shout out TTU alumni, were saying bench Jalen Hurts. They put Tua in. And we wrote him off. I wrote him off. I was like, well, he's done. He's going to Oklahoma. And we wrote him off. Didn't think he'd be much of a pro. Tua got all the shine. Now it's come full circle. And Tua is the one that's struggling. And Jalen Hurts, who just a year ago, they couldn't even put up a point. They were a laughingstock against Tampa Bay. Didn't score. And then now here they are. And I just want to say, Jerry Jones and them, man, Howie Roseman has done circles. This is the second time in 5 years. He has stripped it down, built it up, stripped it down, built it up. And what he has just done is just impressive. So very cool. And man, Jalen Hurts wearing his faith on his sleeve. He was quoting scripture last night at the podium. Very, very wise, well-versed kid. And then
hold on a second. Did anybody catch that extremely out of context verse that he quoted?
Completely out of context.
I just heard him quoting it. Okay.
Yeah.
He quoted from John, I think, where Jesus is speaking, and he says, "You don't understand this now, but later you'll understand." And I'm thinking, do you think you're Jesus or something? I don't know. I don't want to go after him for doing that, because you got to give the guy credit for trying. But I do want to share on the podcast. I texted you guys last night. I let my 7-year-old stay up and watch that whole Kansas City game, and he rarely stays up that late. So they end the game, and then they're waiting on Mahomes to get that post-game interview. And I'm just like, well, this is going to be fine. This is like the NFL Steph Curry. He's probably going to give thanks to Jesus. And he was about to do that. Here comes Travis Kelce, completely interrupts the interview and drops a cuss word right there. And it was just funny, man. It was funny.
Go to bed, son.
Yeah.
That's funny. And hey, let's be honest too, on the Cincinnati side, his line was banged. I mean, they had held it together as long as they could, but I mean, they got 4 or 5 sacks early, And so he was feeling pressure. And so he was definitely at a disadvantage. I mean, if you take in the ankle and then his O-line, did a disadvantage, but he didn't play bad by any stretch of the
Hey,
imagination.
listen, Chris Jones won that game for them.
Oh,
like
yeah.
he had that kind of Aaron Donald type performance that every time they needed something to happen, he got a sack or he got a pressure. Or he got Chris Jones definitely was the difference maker for the Bengals. I mean, for the Chiefs last night against the Bengals.
Totally agree.
Hey, Joseph, Adam's right. He came in, Kelsey came in right at the wrong time, but he did have the line of the night. Shut your mouth and know your role, jabroni. I mean, come on, I like that.
Yeah. Hey, and
Quoting the
let's
Rock.
say,
Quoting the Rock.
the Cincinnati mayor is going to be getting hate mail for a long time. Man, what a goober. Well, hey, Dr. Pace, let me ask you this. We still got 2 weeks, but what's your early thoughts on Super Bowl?
Yeah, I'm probably leaning towards the Eagles because they showed such a well-rounded kind of, performance. I know it was against a depleted San Francisco offense, but again, they've been strong all year. I do think Kansas City's shown a little vulnerability here and there, and they've had a lot of injuries. Even last night, there were different guys getting, knocked here and there and out of the game, and they'll probably all be playing. Again, I think that Mahomes' ankle thing was kind of overblown just as a storyline. So they'll be ready to go, but I'm picking the Eagles. I don't have really a rooting interest in it, but I'm probably picking them to win if I had to.
Nice, Adam. What do you think?
I could change by the time we do our picks on the next episode, but my eyes are telling me Philly because, like I said, up front on both sides of the ball, they dominate, and they have been all year except when Jalen was hurt for a little bit. But, man, my gut is just telling me it's Mahomes, and they might get into somewhat of a shootout. I think Philly's obviously going to try to – how many running backs do they have? It seems like they've got like 5 or something. They're going to try to control the tempo and the clock. But, man, it's Pat Mahomes. And I think a lot will depend on how many of those receivers are going to be able to play because he was getting down to – I think he had like 3 available last night. So if I had to say today, I'm going to ride with Kansas City. I want Mahomes because we all know how great he is. I want him to get his second ring early on so we're not 10 years down the line and we're like, well, he just got one. So we'll see.
That would be fascinating if he took on the whole LeBron, Aaron Rodgers. If he lost this one, he'd be 1-3. Now, one of them wasn't his fault. And so that'd be a real interesting narrative. But before I pass it to him, Adam, I agree with you. I think while that front on both sides for Philly is good, I think the Eagles' defense is good enough. It's going to be a whole different ballgame. You talk Super Bowl, and it's going to ratchet everything up. And I don't know if they can. I mean, think about it. They're probably going to get Scantling back, and they'll get Juju Smith-Schuster, and so they just got weapons all over the place. And at the end of the day, they're stout and they got a good line, but I don't know if they can detonate Mahomes. Dad, what do you think?
I think it's going to be Philly by 13. I don't even think it's going to be close. Yeah, I don't. I think they're going to come in, control the line of scrimmage. I don't think Kansas City's played a defense like they're getting ready to play. I mean, you got to remember, this is the perfect defense set up to play Kansas City. They go after the quarterback. They've had more sacks than anybody in the last 15 years. So they're going to come after Mahomes. He's still going to be gimpy. He's not going to be at 100%. And they have a ball-controlled offense. They have a great running quarterback. They are a very complete team. But I will say this. Here's the only chance I think Kansas City has of winning, and it could happen. If Kansas City gets an early lead, if all of a sudden they come out and hit 14 points like that, we have not seen Philly have to come from behind like that. They've not had to play air raid ball. So if Kansas City can come out strong, they got a shot of winning. But if they don't, then I think they'll get worn down, and then Philly's pass rush will eventually get to Mahomes, when he's trying to bring them back and you're playing into their hands. They have a complete team, and it's going to be a tough one for Kansas City. Now, I think they're tough and they're tough-minded, but I think they'll be a little overmatched. Philly
has not played an offense other than Dallas, because we played good that game, like Kansas City. And so it'll be real interesting to see. And here's another thing. They're good up front, but middle of the field, do they have a linebacker that can guard Kelsey? It's gonna determine, can Mahomes get enough time? So that'll be interesting. By the way, excited to announce next week we'll make our preacher's picks with our special guest. Ready for this one, Dr. Pace? We're bringing on Pastor Marcus Hayes out of Texas. Yeah, so he's going to come on next week and make some Super Bowl picks. But all right, that's one side of the coin as we're shifting down football season, and we are slowly shifting gears into basketball. We got some college basketball lovers. They got the two enemy teams represented. We got Carolina and we got Duke. Now, thankfully, Dr. Pace, I'm sure, was thankful that Duke won yesterday, and we are early into the Jon Scheyer reign. So, Dr. Pace, give us your honest early assessment. How do you think Jon Scheyer will do, and do you think he can keep Duke's program at the level that Coach K left it?
Hey, listen, I think for everything that he's done so far and everything that the Duke brotherhood and family would say, I think you would hear yes. From what I've seen, the games I've been to, even this season, the Duke family is in full support of him. And I think that means a lot for a young coach. I think Hubert Davis saw it last year at Carolina. It helps them. The reason I would say yes, though, the bigger reason is he's been the top recruiter for Duke the last couple of years. He's been the kind of the key ingredient behind the curtain, because Coach K knew he was on his way out, didn't want to recruit a bunch of guys that then he was going to end up leaving from. And so Scheyer still got that. You look at next year's recruiting class and even the one after that, it's really strong coming in. It's hard to not be competitive when you have that much talent. This year, we've already had a lot of injuries. I think that's the only thing that can kind of undercut a lot of incoming talent in the college basketball world. And so that's tough. I also think, and this is just plain and simple, all the NIL deals and various things, it plays into the hand of the stronger programs. Nobody gets as much airplay as Duke. Let's just be honest. And Coach K built that from his 30-plus years there. And so I just think that the NIL deals, the recruiting will still be strong. So that's not all Jon Scheyer related. I do think he's an X's and O guy. He's a proven winner. He won a national championship. So he's got kind of that pedigree. He's Duke blue through and through. So, yeah, I think he's going to be able to keep the program at the upper crust level.
All right, Adam, what's your unbiased opinion here as a diehard Carolina fan? What do you think?
Well, I'm a little nauseous just from having to listen to that. But I think what was the question? What was the question? Can Scheyer keep it at the level it was at when Coach K left? Just out of curiosity, my memory is slipping a little bit. How did Coach K leave the program? What was the last thing that I can't remember? No. So in a previous episode, Dr. Pace, I shared that I think it was April when the shot went through, I started crying because, man, the anticipation. I'm from North Carolina, so it's just like, woo! Nothing's ever gonna top that. But all jokes aside, like Dr. Pace said, not that it doesn't take any work or any effort, that Scheyer doesn't know his stuff, but he was handed something in good condition. And I think he's right. Duke has already been leading the way, them and Coach Calipari at UK with these one and done players, and the NIL is just going to increase that. Thankfully, Hubert Davis has been killing it for the Tar Heels. He's actually done a far better job recruiting 5-stars than Roy ever did. Mm-hmm. So, nothing about this rivalry is going to be diminished in the slightest bit. But it's always going to be fun. And guess what? It's this Saturday. It's Duke and Carolina. It always creeps up on us, but it's coming.
Man, Dad, as an unbiased person, what do you think? How do you see the playing field leveling out?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because through the years, I was a fan of the Running Rebels. I mean, I was a huge fan of Jerry Tarkanian, and they had a great team for about 20 years. And as soon as he left, it took a little while, but it has absolutely tanked. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Hubert Davis is going to be fine. I'm not sure about Duke, because if you ask the average fan, they have no idea who the coach of the Duke Blue Devils are. So I think he's got about 2 years, 3 max. And if you don't get that thing moving and grooving, it could spell the end to the Duke Blue Devils.
The real question will be, to put it in football terms, does their name brand balance out to what Coach K was? If you say Ohio State, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, they're a machine. Notre Dame, they're gonna keep going. But Coach K was so polarizing that I'd say his name was equally as you had the glory years with Sele and all those, but man, he's considered the GOAT by NBA guys. And so that's the kicker, is can he keep that brand? If he can keep that brand the first few years, and I think Hubert put pressure on him, being that Hubert's first year, even though they didn't win, he made a run. And so they've got to have some early success. I mean, this isn't the year to have a, bounced out in the first round, or, even if he made a Sweet 16 run or made a good run in the tournament. But as a fan, I'm excited for the next generation of ACC blood. We lived in North Carolina for a while in Greensboro, and man, when the ACC tournament would come, there was just nothing like it. So definitely will be something to watch and to see if he can keep it up at that level. Hey,
well,
Dr.
remember, Joseph,
what?
Remember, Joseph, Duke has one coach. That's it.
Yep.
North Carolina, they've had some good coaches, 2 Hall of Fame coaches. And so that legacy is there, and it's not going anywhere.
Well, I'll say this. I don't disagree with that. I will say this, though. I don't think John Shower is going to fall in the category of Bill Guthridge or Matt Doherty that was on the heels of a Dean Smith. He doesn't seem to be in that category. I think he's more in the Hubert Davis, but it's yet to be seen. But I don't think he's going to be that rebound kind of, all right, here's a token Duke guy, got the job, and, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to rebuild. Like I said, the recruiting class, it's already strong, and that's what he built. So now he's just got to coach them. He won't have any excuses. He's going to have the talent. So if anything doesn't materialize for the program in the next couple of years, you're right, it's going to be on him. And so he's going to be set up to take the blame. And I think there's no other way he'd rather have it. So that'll be okay. We'll be watching.
Dr. Pace, I'm going to ask Adam to refrain from letting any vomit come out of his throat when I ask this, but because we've probably never been there and will never be, how awesome is Cameron Indoor Stadium at its peak?
Yeah, tell us about that high school gym, Dr. Pace.
Yeah, the high school gym that Carolina got beat in last year. It's tough. Everybody that goes there will tell you that it's a unique atmosphere. The only Duke Carolina game I've ever been to was actually in the Dean Dome. My sister went to Chapel Hill, and she got me tickets for my birthday one year to go to the Duke Carolina game. Duke ended up winning that game. So I said, I don't ever want to go to another Duke Carolina game in Chapel Hill again. I'm just going to leave the record perfect while it is. But it doesn't matter who they play in Cameron. It's hype. It's unique. It's just like no other venue. You hear all the same stories about a Wrigley Field or other historic venues in different sports. It's a classic. It is what it is, and I think it's the greatest college basketball venue anywhere.
Definite.
I do want to check it out, but Dr. Pace, there's some revisionist history. Duke didn't beat Carolina at Cameron last year. That was the Coach K going away game where they had almost every player he had ever coached there for his last game. And
they probably took up half the bleachers.
Hey, you're right. It was in the Dean Dome we beat y'all last year. So you're right. I got that flipped around. So, yeah.
That's funny. Well, hey, we enjoyed talking sports. Hey, it's so refreshing to have a pastor who equally knows about sports as much as we do. So that's great. But hey, we're going to shift gears from sports to ministry and leadership. And Dr. Pace, I couldn't remember what your official title was, but could you tell us just a little bit about you, about your family and your girls? We've heard your sports bias. Tell us about what you do at the school. And we started asking this to pastors, and I didn't put this on your notes, so I'm gonna throw this one at you. You're like the preaching chair at Southeastern. So the end with, what's your biggest preaching blunder? So go ahead, sir. Tell us about yourself.
Oh gosh, you didn't put that on there, and I don't know. Sometimes I did teach you that transparency is not always a good thing, right? There has to be a limit to it. So I'll get to that one last. Hey, I get to serve here as the dean of the college at Southeastern. I get to teach all kinds. I had, Adam, and get to teach from the undergrad level all the way through the D-Min and PhD. And so I really enjoy that. I teach preaching and pastoral ministry and student ministry. So those are all three places that my personal pastoral ministry experience overlaps. And so it creates kind of a fun dynamic, because those are three worlds that really complement one another and yet at the same time rarely come together. So I get to kind of swim in all those waters. That's a lot of fun. My wife and I have been married for this year, 2023. It'll be 24 years in August. We have 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. The boy is second in line from oldest to youngest. So there's 19, 16, 12, and 10. And so life is full and life is fun. I get to do a lot of those things. Man, preaching blunder. Gosh, I've said some things that I would certainly take back, not just doctrinally, but just, figures of speech that you just look out and you say, that did not land like it sounded in my mind, or that was not really the best way to phrase that in the context I'm in. I'll just kind of leave it at that and not be specific, because I would have to relive that moment to say that. But there's been plenty of them. That's for sure.
Oh no, we totally get it, and we have had many laughs at ourselves and other preachers. And you preach long enough, it's going to happen. But
yeah.
Hey, super excited to have you on, though. For those of you that don't know, you and a guy named Shane Pruitt have recently come out with a book called "Calling Out the Called," talking about calling people up and into ministry. And so, Dr. Pace, we wanted to tell you about this book, but also when you're done, kind of pass it around. Dad and Adam, and I know we all are very passionate about helping people with the call of ministry on their heart. So tell us a little bit about the book and why you guys chose to write it, and where that kind of comes from in your heart.
Yeah, I'll give you a nutshell of kind of the genesis of it. It really came from the fact that a few years ago we started getting a lot of questions for, hey, you have any youth pastor recommendations? Our church is looking, this type of thing, and we began to see that well was running dry. And that became an indicator of a bigger kind of famine or drought, if you will, because youth ministry was always kind of a pipeline towards senior pastor ministry. By the way, I'd say rightly so, because the student ministry world really is in some ways a microcosm of the larger church context. There's a lot of things a student pastor does when you're doing it right and well that then translates into senior pastor leadership. But anyway, so we began to see that. And then we began to read statistics and hear even more significant struggles that churches were having, specifically with identifying or finding senior pastors. And so we came across some statistics, some that your hearers might be interested in. For instance, there are more pastors over the age of 65 right now than there are under the age of 40. When you let that sink in, fast forward 10 years, like where are we going to do when our seasoned leadership retires, so to speak, or moves into kind of itinerant ministry of some kind? Where the leadership going to come from? And we also recognize that all this had kind of generated behind a few different other trends, us steering away from the invitation in general, but then even more specifically that we weren't elevating the conversation, that there was a call to vocational ministry to be considered, prayed through, and pursued. All that was done in a positive kind of effort, in the sense of a lot of people wanted to see, more every church member is a minister type of mentality, which is biblical and right. Man, we ought to be called. It's not all on the clergy. It's not all on the pastors to do it, but to equip the saints for the work of ministry. So in an effort to mobilize members in ministry and for the mission, to leverage their context, their occupation and vocation for the mission of Christ, I think we swung the pendulum that way, but we kind of overcorrected and began to ignore and maybe even diminish the conversation that there was a unique calling to serve Christ in a vocational capacity, whether that's in traditional ministry or missions. And so our whole goal with the book was to kind of course correct a little bit, get some balance in the universal calling on all believers and the unique calling on some believers to kind of follow Christ's call in their life. And so the book itself was meant to elevate the conversation and then provide a resource to then disciple and mentor those who began to sense a call to ministry. Hey, how can we disciple them up or grow them up in preparation for what God is leading them towards? And that has everything from character formation to some skill enhancement to some understanding about the church and ministry and mission dynamics. So we wanted to kind of get them introduced to that on the front end. That's a little bit about where the book came from and what the book is about and what we're hoping to accomplish with it.
That's super cool. Dad is somebody who, and I'll just say this, he's been a pastors for many over the years. And Dad, you've helped people that are maybe they didn't feel called as a student to be in ministry, and you kind of helped show that gifting and kind of speak that into existence. Well, I'm just going to pass it to you if you had any thoughts or questions or just anything on that topic.
Well, I think it's important that pastors be on the lookout for that. I think so many times we're so involved in the day-to-day ministry that we don't see, ministry callings right in front of us. And so that actually is one of the great things that can be had within a church, especially if it's somebody from, homegrown. We have somebody at our church that grew up there at the church, was in the youth group, became a youth pastor, and now, could be a senior pastor, could be an associate pastor at the church. And there's a sense of pride there from the church, knowing where he started and where he is now. And so that actually is something that can be something great within the church. Also, I think it's interesting, something that I'm watching, the generation before me, a lot of the pastors that were called were much older. And so they would go to seminary in their mid-30s. And then in my generation, a little bit younger, actually in yours and Adam's generation, then it started coming from college. So now there's another shift going on, and I'm really not sure where that's going to go, but it's interesting how the different seasons, change according to even age group. So, and I will mention one other thing. I'm looking forward to reading your book because, most churches are 100 below within the United States. And so when you are looking for somebody that may be called to ministry and then you find them, the first thing that we like to do is we just like to have more of a tangible, here's some of the things that I've learned through ministry, but we also need a guide. And so if other pastors who have not spent time in seminary, they're good at sharing some of their own insights and wisdoms, but to have a guide that you can then take so it can supplement some of the natural raw things that you learned in ministry and then transition to more of a guide, I think that really will really help those that have not spent a lot of time in seminary or don't have resources at hand. So I'm looking forward to reading your book and actually taking it and give it to other pastors that I know of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I appreciate so much you saying that, because that was the other piece when we had people saying, hey, where can I find ministry leaders? And we talked to them about training them up. Then it was, okay, when they identify, I do sense God calling me or leading me into ministry. That was the next thing. Okay, so now what do we do with them? We don't have that resource. We don't have that. And that was some of the goal, is to make it biblically sound, obviously, but also practically oriented. And so we did that. We also worked with NAM to come up with, there's 10, if you go to callingoutthecall.com, there's 10 kind of lessons that you can walk through. It's all free, available for download there, that have some 7 to 10 minute videos with each one. And then a 1-page worksheet that has some talking points that kind of raises some questions, helping who you're walking through a mentor, some teaching points, scriptural aspects that you can then, hey, let's look at these scriptures together as it relates to this topic. And then you have some other supplemental, hey, here's some other suggested reading that you can have. And then there's some training points. It looks at, okay, so now what can I give you by way of opportunity or task to go do to help you develop in this, or to get acclimated with that skill or that aspect of ministry. So you can check those resources out too. But you're right, Pastor, that was some of our heart. And man, we need something practical that can serve as a guide to help people as they do identify those who are called to ministry.
Adam?
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear about this book. Dr. Page, this is something our church is dealing with currently. We've got 4 or 5 ministerial staff. Normative sized church for a city. We've got about 170, 180 on a Sunday. But we decided last summer to start looking for a youth minister, and we made it a part-time position. Since that time, we've gotten 4 resumes. And mind you, we're not out in the country. This is not Possum Holler Baptist Church. We are in Richmond metro area and just are not getting anything. So maybe when we're done recording, I want to pick your brain about something. But I do want to ask you this. In light of that, in the context of your book, you mentioned about swinging the pendulum. Do you think that the church planting movement and even the NAM with the Sin Cities, all these young guys that, they're newlyweds, maybe they've got 1 kid, they're getting their feet wet in ministry. And these little, church plants are popping up everywhere. Do you think that is a big cause and the reason why we might be here? And of course, it doesn't mean that's bad. No one would say that church planting is bad, but kind of the unintended consequence of that.
Right. Yeah, I think there can be always secondary effects, or like you mentioned, unintended consequences. That's, hey, I'm not sure that we accounted for the impact that some of those decisions or those approaches would have. What's encouraging to me is see some of the new re-emphasis on some of the revitalizations that are taking place, and that's kind of becoming a growing trend that would take the value of what God has done in the historically kind of grounded churches there, and kind of again replant, revitalize those. And I think that's going to be a long-term healthy approach. So there's a lot of secondary contributing factors to it that we have to address and be mindful of as we move forward to avoid some of those unintended consequences. But ultimately, it really has to start with just elevating the conversation. I was talking to a pastor friend of mine down in Raleigh of a sizable church, very influential church, and he was so burdened by our situation here in North Carolina. We have about 20% on any given Sunday of our SBC churches that don't have a pastor in the pulpit. And this isn't unique to North Carolina. This is the same. You talk to other state execs and various things. And so he said, man, I've got to include this and where it's appropriate with his application and his expository message. We're saying all the right things there. Okay. But he said, some of you, God has used you in your current vocational context. He says, God just issued a call to our church members. You need to prayerfully consider, is God calling you to leverage this second part of your life? And Pastor Joe, that's some of maybe what you were talking about, that second season of your life calling to ministry. He said he had 4 church members that week, independent of one another, say, Pastor, I need to really prayerfully consider this. I sense that God may be leading me to do that. And that's just, again, an anecdotal testimony of when we elevate the conversation, it provides a category and maybe the opportunity for God to stir in the hearts of the listeners there that previously wouldn't have or haven't considered that as an option.
One of my favorite things to do is I was the kid where I was a product where, ministry, some people got they kicking and screaming pulled into ministry. But for me, it was like, man, I knew from the moment we were at youth camp and I was 13, it's like, I want to be a pastor. I just knew it. And so I'm that guy. I'm like, man, I get to live the dream. I love going to church. I love preaching. I love everything about it. And so being somebody that was planted in me at a young age from watching my dad, my grandfather, nowadays, I've really tried to kind of what you were saying with the Lord, just cast the wide net, because we've all seen it. Some people view ministry as this, oh man, I want to go to have coffee and they get in there a little bit and then they hit a little adversity and they flake out. So my thought is, man, I'm going to cast a wide net. And even there's some kids in our 4th and 5th grade ministry that, I'm teaching in kid church sometimes, and you could just see the passion that comes out of them. They went in the way they interact with people. And I'm starting to tell their parents, like, hey, listen, one of your 2 boys is going to be in ministry, or they need to be. And one of them is a 7th grader. And I've already started planting that thought of, hey, listen, man, you could go be a scientist or a weatherman, but man, I just want you to know that it is not a career option, but a calling to be able to be a pastor. You can work at a church and do what Pastor so-and-so does. And you have the gifts, even as a middle schooler. I totally believe as a middle schooler. And I've been really trying to speak that into people and show them that gift. Because what do they all say? Oh, not me. I can't never do that. And a lot of times people just need to be believed in, or dad, a friend of the show, John Richardson, who's senior pastor now. Sometimes people just, like you said, they have to have that called out. And man, when you see somebody, we're out of town this week, and one of my young adults, I just really challenged him, and watching him preach his first message and come off that and just be super pumped. And this week I'm like, hey, I'm going to be gone. I want you to preach on Philippians 1, verse 9 through 11. And he's that, young, exciting, whatever. And then last thing, Dad, I'll pass it to you. There's a gentleman who used to be in our church. He was the former chairman of the deacons, former on personnel. He was a trustee at the church. I was going through my master's, about to start my doctorate, and he was 56. And he was the guy in the workplace, common workplace business owner. And I just said, man, I know, God's called you to have a business, but man, you've missed your calling, kind of joking. Hey man, like you would be a great pastor. Well, the Lord kind of burned his heart. Long story short, he ended up going into seminary, got his MM, And then now he's the senior pastor revitalizing a church going into his 60s. And so it's just super cool, man. I think the place the church is at, it's not going to look prototypical like it did 20 years ago. But, man, some of the people that are most ripe for ministry, they don't have seminary degrees, but, man, they've got the heart. They don't have soft hands, and they are in the trenches. Dad, thoughts?
I mean, it just goes back to the local church. See them, watch them, invest in them. You know, you're not going to watch them or invest in them if you're not looking. So it goes back to the senior pastor to kind of look and hear and feel. And we all know it. When you see it, you know it. And then that whole process begins. But if you're not looking, you just miss an awesome opportunity for a church to come alongside somebody that God's calling into ministry and to watch it and to be a part of it. So it's something that it all starts with the local church, and it starts with the pastor, you know, watching to see what's going on in his church.
Hey, listen, I'll say this to echo that. You know, that's some of the greatest joy that we have is seeing new people come to faith in Christ, and then watching someone discern their calling and reproducing yourself in them. This is how Paul spoke of the Thessalonians, right? As his joy and his crown, as he speaks of Titus and Timothy as his true son and the common faith. This was the great joy that they had in passing on what had been entrusted to them, that 2 Timothy 2:2 model, into other faithful men who would then teach others as well. So that's really where the joy in ministry comes from. And when we don't do that as pastors, when we aren't calling out the called, we're missing some of the greatest fruit in our ministry that God wants to produce there. And so that's the fruit that remains. That's what we want to see. And that's the fruit that we ought to be going after as well. I think some of the greatest indication of the health of a church is in seeing people come to faith in Christ and seeing people called into ministry and mobilized out for God's kingdom. So those are the two best indicators, and we can't focus on one without also recognizing the significance of the other.
That's good. A lot of meat on the table. Well, I definitely have to continue that conversation. If you hadn't got it yet, Calling Out the Called, go get that book. Hey, fellas, we want to do one more question. Just because we are the Sunday morning quarterback, we have men, women, parents, ministers, church members of all ages. And so we've been trying to sprinkle in a little bit about marriage, a little bit about parenting, a little bit about cultural or Christian living. And so here's our final question, and we won't go as long, but we can give some good thoughts on this. Adam, I'm going to start with you. Today as parents, how should Christians navigate the many dangers of technology with kids in their home?
Well, I'm not experienced in this like Scott is, or probably Joe is. I've got 3 kids, 7, 6, and 3. And I'm the one that put this question in more so because I wanted the answers for myself. But the reason I say that is it's very intimidating because even if you're a family that you're not immersed in technology and you don't have, 10 screens in your house, even if you've got 2 or 3, it's like, man, you can't do enough to safeguard everything. And so I think if I could just say one word, it would be diligence on every front, because, so much is said about technology and the way that it reads us in these things, but man, it's just relentless the way they come after you and come after the children. And so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of, experience through this kind of thing. So I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Pace.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I've learned as much by mistakes as I've learned by success. I think we all can testify to that in our lives. As we've seen it, here's a couple things I would say. One, you can't ignore it. Look, a lot of our kids in school, no matter whether it's charter school, Christian school, public school, or even homeschool, at this point, they're using technology as part of the education. And so to try to somehow detach them from technology, you're pushing the rope uphill. It's not going to happen. And so you got to kind of say, how can I do this well? So the goal, to use a different kind of analogy, if you will, when you have toddlers, there's some elements of your house that you childproof, right? You put the little outlet plugs in the outlets. And so you need to take the steps when they're that age to do that. But eventually you have to teach the child, hey, you can't touch the stove when it's hot. There's only so much you can do. Otherwise, you have to condition the heart to make wise and healthy choices. The other thing I would say is be informed, be educated. It's your responsibility as a parent to know what's out there, to know what the trends are, to know what students are kind of getting bombarded with, or even younger people. It's just getting younger and younger, and how to navigate that, conditioning them, having those conversations, being proactive rather than letting kind of the children educate you. You need to be the one educating your children. And then like parenting with any area of discipline or kind of safeguard is consistency. Man, you got to have consistency. The moment you begin to waffle, the moment you make it situational, we all know situational ethics is bad. That's not the right approach. You want to make sure that you develop those consistent patterns to where their heart is conditioned in the right way, and to love the Lord and what that looks like. The other thing we try to do is very simple, pragmatic here, but we have kind of no phone zones. So if we're sitting at the dinner table, if we're out at a restaurant, it's easy for everybody to just kind of gravitate into their little black hole that's in their pocket or whatever in their device. And we make it intentional to set that aside to where they don't always run to that. We also try to limit the time they spend on there. Don't try to put them in a room where they're alone with their device, but making them, hey, you can be on your device, but you can be down here with us, that type of thing. There's just some safeguards like that I think are really practical and really, I hate to say common sense, because a lot of people don't use the common sense God's given us, but common sense. And don't use technology as a babysitter. Too many times it's so easy to just say, look, just sit down with this and go do, dad or mom has to do this, and we use technology as a babysitter. That's a recipe for disaster.
Dad, I know you're a low-tech man in a high-tech world, but any overall big overarching thoughts you have for any parents out there?
Yeah, know your kids, know their personality, know how they learn, know how they listen. It's not what you say that matters, is what they hear. And so it's important that you understand where your son or your daughter is and communicate with them well. And so, and then it changes as they get older, the way you communicate, the way they hear. When they're a child, they listen different when they're a teenager. As they grow, try to mature your conversation a little bit. But again, it goes back to watching, listening, and investing. It's all the same. But spend time with them. Really hear what they're trying to say, even if they're not saying it. And so you have to give it some real effort. So when you're listening or have a conversation, it's more about what they're saying than what you're saying, because what you hear dictates what you say. So it's all about really hearing what your son and daughter, where they are, what are they learning, where are they going, and then don't be afraid to change some of your methods depending on the age group and how their personality begins to change.
From a football perspective, for years, I think we got away with, playing defense. But now, you have to play offense to the point where, my daughter's cartoons that she watches, it's a regular thing for one of her favorite cartoons to be introduced to a, sexuality topic or, just a very, very adult topics. And so I think you have to flip the switch and be offensive. But let me also say this. I think for years, this conversation based around, most people thought of it in terms of boys, but now you have to widen as a father of two girls, the social media aspect, it attacks females too, but also in different ways. So if you're talking, Instagram, social media, identity, and the things that they're finding their worth in, that's a whole different side of the coin where we traditionally might not be okay, websites that they don't need to be at, but that is just as equally as damaging. And so we've got to really widen our thoughts and be proactive and offensive and think, okay, these things are going to encounter them, kind of like Dr. Pace, you were saying. So when it comes to you, I might not be there. You might be with somebody else. Preparing for when it happens or when you're attacked or when you're on Instagram and you have these thoughts of really questioning your identity or comparing your worth to others. And so I think we really need to expand that topic because a lot of teens are really struggling just as much in that identity phase. Adam, what do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say this real quick. I think where parents really struggle is when they just focus on the moral approach, the yes and the no. There's a part of the moral approach, the yes and the no of life. There's also a philosophical approach. And those two things have to come together. And so we have the time where it's the yes, the no, the right and the wrong. but we have to have that philosophical approach, meaning we're really listening to what they're saying. And that's when we can really dive deep into their lives. So there are two different methods going on in a person's personality and psyche, even, biblically and spiritually.
Adam, you want to finish this up?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, but I've got 2 books that I'd like to recommend, and maybe we can link those underneath this along with Dr. Pace's new book. One is by Andy Kraut, who's well known for a book. I think it was called Culture Making, but he wrote a book called The Tech Wise Family. And it has just a lot of those very practical things like Dr. Pace mentioned about, no phone zone and things like that. And then Tony Reinke, who I think is John Piper's kind of right-hand man, he wrote a book called 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. And oh my goodness, it's one of the top 10 books I have ever read in my life. And maybe that's because the phone changes me, but man, and it's not a knock on technology. It's not, berating technology, but it's just showing here is what this thing that's supposed to be a helper can do if you don't use it as a tool and you become an instrument for itself. And so I would just highly recommend those to everyone listening. You would benefit from them.
Let me add one more to that, and it goes along with what Joe was saying. Paul Tripp wrote a book. It's been out, I don't know, probably close to 20 years now or more, called Age of Opportunity. Age of Opportunity is geared towards the teenage years, and it really is about how to capture the heart and steer and develop the heart, much like his brother wrote for Shepherd and Child's Heart on the younger end. But Age of Opportunity challenges us as parents as well, with idols in our heart and how we parent towards those idols sometimes, but also how to condition your teen to think well and to not go through the teenage years as this kind of like, hey, let's just keep things together. And if we don't steer into the ditch, we'll survive and get through it. But actually how to leverage that season in life towards, spiritual fruitfulness that can produce a long life of, happiness and holiness.
Well, fellas, I've enjoyed this conversation. Dr. Pace, hopefully this will be the first of many appearances. Hey, and fellas, I want to put you on record real quick. Duke and Carolina are playing this week. Y'all got any score predictions?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Carolina. We've got a tough game against Pittsburgh, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I think doesn't Duke, who do they play this week? Miami, or it's not a gloss over team. It's someone good.
Yeah. Both of us have kind of set up games to where, we could look past them and get tripped up. So it's going to kind of ramp us up and prepare for it. But yeah.
I'm going to go Carolina by 10. Mainly because we've just got a bunch of upperclassmen, and Duke, as usual, has a bunch of freshmen. I think Roach is there, so he's going to do okay. But yeah, I think we'll make light work of the Dukies this weekend.
It's not going to surprise you, right? We're both going with the homer pick, right?
Yeah,
like you went with Carolina. So, but I'm going to argue a little bit I do think home court advantage will help a little bit, especially with the young kids. I feel better about our front court than I have in a long time. Lively is a shot blocker and can contest a lot of that stuff that comes inside. I don't think Caleb Love can somehow hit the lucky jackpot 3 times in a row against Duke. The last 2 games against Duke, Caleb Love killed us. I'd love to hear Adam's take on Caleb Love. I think a lot of Carolina fans are kind of, not to be punny, but love-hate relationship with him. He can shoot y'all into games or shoot y'all out of games. And I got a feeling that, we got some better defenders on the perimeter that I think will give him fits, but I think he's going to try and play hero ball too much. So I'm going to give Duke the edge by somewhere into the 6 to 8 point range.
Nice. I love it. Hey, man, we just go ministry to sports. Bam, like that. Love it. Well, hey, Dr. Pace, we appreciate you coming on. Everybody, have a great week. We'll see you next week with Pastor Marcus A.